And we are ready.
Hi. Welcome everybody to our monthly PRAC meeting. It is currently May 27th, 2021. And by way of introductions, we'll introduce our PRAC members. Then as we go through our presentations and different items on the agenda tonight, we will introduce those individuals at that time. But for our PRAC members, if you would, as I call your name, just for anyone watching who's either with us or watching live or even on any of the replays, let's make sure they know who we are. So Tim, Tim West, if you want to say hi, wave.
Hello, welcome everybody.
And then Brent.
Hi, everybody.
And Sean.
Right here. Good to see everybody.
Andy. Derek. Jeff.
Howdy.
Karen.
President is still.
And that is it. I'm Troy Bollinger, chair of PRAC, and those are all of our members of PRAC tonight. And as everyone had a chance, everyone has had a chance to go over the minutes. So do we have any questions, clarification, any revisions for our minutes from last month's meeting? And if we don't, we can certainly entertain a motion to approve.
Oh, this is Karen, and I've got something to say before I make a motion.
Okay.
This is a process issue. Thank you so much.
About the minutes specifically though?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much to the staff who is taking the time to watch the video and come up with the minutes. My issue is when we make a motion, either the mover or the chair needs to restate the motion in full so that it is reflected in the minutes, and then the vote. I was trying to go back on something and I come up with, Sean included something in a statement where I suggested it go last month on the park naming. It doesn't name the document, it doesn't name the section, and it doesn't actually restate the full motion. In the future, that can come back to bite us. So just a reminder that the mover or the chair needs to completely restate the motion before a vote is taken. But given that, I will move that we accept the minutes as written for last month.
So Karen, for clarification, you're asking, or you're requesting that throughout the meeting, when somebody makes a motion, that they restate the entire motion at the time they make it? Is that what you're saying?
Before the vote. Before we take the vote, either the mover or the chair needs to restate the motion so everyone is clear on what they're voting on and needs to be specific. So if we're revising a document, name the document, name the section, so there isn't a question in the future.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we need to go that detailed. I mean, we've got the, we're going item by item on the agenda, so we know what we're talking about, and then usually we make a motion to approve, and then typically, not always, but typically we say motion to approve whatever the item is, and then we second, and then we vote. I think that's sufficient right there. I don't think it's necessary that we restate yet again, word for word as it is, unless, of course, we've got a revision to the motion or an addendum to the motion.
Troy, trust me, I teach parliamentary procedure.
But I'm certainly not disagreeing with your opinion.
Comment made and on the record, I move approval of the minutes as written from last month.
That's fine. You raised your motion before, and I'm not disagreeing with your opinion. I'm just simply, after hearing your opinion, saying, no, we don't need to do that. and we don't need to go to that extent. So we will state it as we have been, and we'll go ahead and make a motion, and then we'll just vote as is without restating it. Karen has a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
This is Andy, second.
Andy with the second. Before we vote, Sean, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to make a second.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we have Karen with the motion, Andy with the second. Any discussion before we vote? Kendall?
All right. Tim West,
I vote yes.
Sharon Morey,
Aye.
Troy Bollinger,
Aye.
Jeff Sargent,
Aye.
Derek Kugel,
Aye.
Andy Crump,
Aye.
Don Datchler,
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, this would be a time for public comment. Everybody, if you had public comment, certainly we would email Kendall. Hopefully you've done that. If not, you certainly still can for the next few minutes here. And we'll make sure that everybody that wants to speak, this would be the time to do that about any item not on the agenda. If you're here to speak about something on the agenda, we'll take that at the time it comes at its turn on the agenda. At this point, I have here to speak, make public comment is Commissioner Denise McGriff. So Commissioner McGriff, if you want to unmute and then feel free. You've got you got the floor for 3 minutes, and we will listen to you.
Well, let me just take a moment and let you know that the way Karen Morey was suggesting you restate the motion is how the City Commission does it and the Planning Commission. It is correct parliamentary procedure. I also have training in parliamentary procedure. That is standard. That's what the City of Oregon City does. So I just want to let you know that, yes, we restate the motion before we vote so everyone is clear and it's on the record. So I'm sure your staff is going to tell you probably the same thing, but I just wanted to add that since I'm also trained, and Karen and I kind of take turns when we're at meetings helping people out with that sort of thing. So before I speak, I wanted to introduce, if she'll let her unmute herself, is Stacy Hall. She is the person that brought this topic to my attention, and I passed it on to Kendall Reed. And if you'll give her just a few moments to speak, and then I will end with a comment about the proposal. So can Stacy speak? I did let Kendall know that she would be logging on to the meeting.
Yeah, I was going to take her after you, but if you want to pass to her.
Yes, I'd rather she speak first since this was her idea, and I want to give her the credit. So Stacy, are you there?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, Stacy, if you want to have 3 minutes and then.
Okay. No worries. I won't take that long. I had contacted.
Hold on, Stacy, 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. You go ahead and take your 3 minutes. Not yet. We haven't started your clock yet, so you're fine. But then after Commissioner McGriff, we'll give you the remainder of your 3, so you'll have 2 more minutes after she's done, since you took 1 of your minutes already. So Stacy, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to, I had contacted Denise originally because I'm very concerned about monarch butterflies. I think most of us know that unfortunately they are in decline. And so if we could have the parks involved in some way to encourage and plant the milkweed that is their host plant so that we could increase the opportunity for plants that would encourage the butterflies to come, and then hopefully we can stop this decline and we won't have the issue with them going extinct. So it was something that I would hope to encourage the City of Oregon City, since we are looking to be very environmentally minded, that this is something that we could get everybody to rally around.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McGriff? 2 minutes?
Yes. Thank you so much, committee members. I first of all want to thank you for your service on PRAC. It's a very, very important committee, and I appreciate the time that you all take to devote yourselves to helping the city's parks and also helping Kendall. It's a comfort to us and the commission to know that we've got people that are really helpful and like parks and will help us in our efforts to promote our parks. So as Stacy said, she brought this to my attention and I thought, well, this is something I need to talk to Kendall about. So we're not talking about planting butterfly bushes. I want to make sure people understand that they see the record. That is a noxious weed according to the Oregon State Extension Service. So don't plant those. It's milkweed. But unfortunately, as you know, pollinators in our country are declining. That includes not only that we provide an opportunity in our community for conservation of these important species. And one way, as Stacy said, is that the program for Monarch Butterfly Pledge proposes to work with local, state, and national partners in order to restore and enhance habitat for the monarchs. I was fortunate enough to live in California at their heyday when I was a child, and my parents used to take us out in the Monterey Bay Area and watch them all kind of come in, and it was a sight to see. I mean, you've never seen anything like it except in Mexico, where they also migrate. There's just thousands and thousands of them. Well, they're not there anymore, but I want to thank you for taking this up. And Kendall, I think you said you've done some additional conversation with them about letting us get into the program, even though we're a little late to the party, but better late than never. But I just want to thank you all for considering this. And again, how much I appreciate your work. And I see many friends here, my neighbor, Tim and Andy and Sean. So it's just great. All your work is really much appreciated. I thank you so much for having Stacy and myself come and speak with you. So again, thank you so much. And I do have another meeting, unfortunately, so I am going to log off.
Thank you, Commissioner, and Stacy.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Kendall, do you have anybody else that is asked to speak during this time?
No, Troy, those were the only two.
Okay, perfect. Then we now are going to hear from the HDR project management team about the ODOT I-205 corridor widening project update. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Troy. And thanks everyone for having us. Stephanie, are you pulling the presentation up?
I am.
All right.
You can do. You want to introduce who's here while I do that on our team?
Sure.
Figure out how to share.
So my name is, as I mentioned, Alan Hindy. I'm the resident engineer for ODOT and out of the Urban Mobility Office and the project manager for the I-205 Improvements Project. With me this evening, I've got Stephanie Serpico, who is the project manager for HDR, leading the consultant team on the effort to design and permit this project. I've got Karen Tapman, who is she's with Quincy, and she's our lead for roadway and bridges on the project as well. And then I've got Brian Bowman. Are you guys all turning your cameras on? Hopefully, well, if not.
Asking a lot, Ellen.
And then Brian Bowman is our environmental permit coordinator with HDR, getting all the permits for this project. So again, thanks for having us. We're excited to start sharing this with all of our partner agencies and stakeholders. We've made a lot of progress this year, and we're excited to start sharing that progress and talking about what's coming up this next year. So with that being said, we switch to the next slide, please, so we can go over the agenda. So tonight we'll talk about the kind of the project phasing. I think a lot of people have seen or heard bits and pieces about the project, but we're going to talk about the kind of the phasing and how we see the project being built out from this point forward. We'll talk a little bit about the bridge itself and kind of the unique design and construction that's going to be happen with that bridge. And then we'll look at some more of the details with Oregon City and kind of what work we're doing around Clackamette Drive and the John Storm Park as well. So next slide, please. So this is a slide that maybe everyone here has seen, maybe you haven't, but we've been sharing this for quite a while. This shows the entire project, phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 starts up at 213 on the north and or east side of the project, and the project continues all the way over to Stafford Road on the south end of 205, or the west side of the project. The project's been split into 2 phases. The project team is working primarily on phase 1 at this point. Phase 1 goes from 213 down to 10th Street in West Lynn, and then phase 2 picks up from 10th Street and goes west. The improvements that are part of phase 1 are kind of shown here with the little symbols. The green little earthquake symbol, those are seismically upgraded bridges. So Main Street, the Abernethy Bridge are being seismically upgraded, and so is 10th Street. And so that's kind of what's happening in phase 1. The 2 blue wrenches you see in the middle there are West A Street and Sunset. Both of those are full bridge replacements. The interchange symbol, the blue interchange symbol that's next to it, that is at Oregon 43, and that's going to be a reconfiguration of the interchange and a roundabout. And then you can see the rest of the symbols throughout the project. There's 2 noise walls there shown in phase 2 on the left there. There's actually a noise wall that just got voted in by some of the residents of Oregon City, up by Main Street. And then the other symbols are just the traveler information signs that we've installed 5 of them, and we've got 2 left to do. And so those are kind of spread throughout the project as well. Okay, next slide. So this is what we're calling package 1A. And so this is going to be the construction package that goes out this year for bidding and starts construction next year. As you can see, the dates there, we're hoping to advertise in December of this year. And then we'll have 2 different components of the bid that will come in, one in February and one in March. And then we're hoping to give a notice to proceed to the contractor in April of next year. So this one's kind of flipped around the opposite way of the one we were just looking at. North is on the left side and south is on the right. So Oregon City's over there on the left side as well. But this project, or this phase of the project, will widen the Abernethy structure, and some distance on each side of the bridge will be widened as well, as we start preparing the lane configuration for the ultimate build, which includes the other components shown on the last slide. This phase will also reconstruct the interchange at Oregon 43, at OR 43 and 205 into a roundabout. Part of this project will remove the existing northbound on-ramp from Oregon 43, and that traffic will be funneled through the roundabout into a combined access point. That right there is one of the big elements that's going to help relieve some congestion and help make this stretch in this corridor more reliable for travelers, because we'll add an auxiliary lane, and then we're going to be getting rid of one of those one of those merge points on the freeway. On the Oregon City side, we're going to be doing some work down there around Clackamette Drive, which Stephanie will show a little bit later. The interchange at Oregon 99 will be reconfigured with new ramps, and the reconfiguration is all necessary so that we can accommodate the widening of the bridge and the lanes that come off of it. And so the ramps have to get reconfigured. And that's the kind of the bulk of the work for this first package, is those 2 interchanges and the bridge widening. We're going to have some striping and signing and some lighting that may extend north or south of the project, just so we can make sure that we have good transitions in and out of this section after it's completed. The goal is the northern section from basically where you see that Main Street bridge. So from that section to the north will be the next package that goes out next year. And then the packages out to the south from basically what you see on the right side of your screen down to 10th Street will be released in concurrent years after that. So that's kind of how we're setting this project up for construction at this point. We just, HDR and Stephanie and her team just delivered our 90% plans. So we're making really good progress. We're going to be wrapping up those plans for what you see on this screen by the end of the summer, with hopes.
Did we lose them?
He froze.
Who froze? Was it me or was it Alan?
It was Alan.
Okay. He was having problems. So
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, we can.
All right, I turned my video off. I don't know what's going on with my computer. Okay. So next slide. So this shows a little bit about what our bridge construction is going to look like. You can see kind of, it's shaded, but you can see the existing columns that support the structure. And so the new bridge is going to be much wider. It'll have much wider support structures that are going to be on large 12-foot diameter shafts that will be, up to 200 feet deep. And so that's why you see the structure is so wide, because we're going to slide both bridges, and we'll get to that in just a minute, but we're going to slide both bridges out so we can accomplish the widening of the structure. And because of the soil conditions and the loads that have to be applied to it to withstand an earthquake, it requires these massive foundations. And so that's why you see what you see on this screen. It's going to be a very large structure. Next slide. So this kind of walks through a little bit about what I was talking about as far as how we're going to construct the actual widening. Once we get the foundation and those cross beams and the supports all constructed out of the water, we're going to slide both the northbound and the southbound bridges, because they are basically a continuous sort of structure, and they're independent of each other. So the first slide will be on the northbound direction. So we'll slide the northbound bridge, and then once we do the widening work, which will include some of those overhang brackets, which you can see down on the slide 2 there, that will provide the widened area, and then we'll come back and we'll slide the southbound bridge. Now when we slide these bridges and do this work, it will require full directional closures of the freeway over a weekend. So that's something we don't know when that is yet, because that will be entirely dependent on the contractor and what their schedule is once we get a contractor on board. But we have a full team working on how we're going to message this to the public and how we're going to inform people so that everyone knows when this is coming, what the detour routes are, and so hopefully it can go smoothly. Next slide. Oh, and this shows the finish. So we'll slide both bridges and we'll do the finish work in the middle. And then that's what the finished structure will look like that on the bottom one. So, okay, I think that's it. You're on the next one. Okay, take it away, Stephanie.
Thank you. And as Alan was saying, we're going to do some improvements along Clackamette Drive as a part of the 1A project. We'll be building the multi-use path connection. You can see here this red trail around to a crosswalk. We'll put new curb ramps and crosswalk crossing here to get to John Storm Park. We're going to build some new on-street parking. along Clackamette Drive. So when we are using the temporary staging area, and we'll show that in another slide also, for construction access, and that will have some additional parking for folks along the Clackamette Drive. And we're also doing the Abernethy Creek fish passage enhancement and realigning the creek. And let's see what else. That was the shared use path. And then we're doing some more sidewalk and crosswalk improvements on the other side of Clackamette Drive also. And then just a little close up of the parking, just to see where we're putting in the parking with the landscape and the sidewalk. And to use those, to use the areas in the park, we went out to, just for a reminder for folks, that I think we have some new participants on the council, that we went out to the park and we went out to the public for a ballot measure to, get support or approval to use some of the park area for temporary construction areas. And it was a success, 80% support. So that's fabulous. That's great news. Just everybody was supportive of the ballot measure, the project. And basically what was approved is what we're implementing in our project. The Johnstorm Park, we have the temporary work easement. It's up to 4 years once construction begins. And that is, and I know Alan alluded to it, with the substructure and the soil stabilization and the staging that we have going on out there. That's why we needed the easement for that work. And then on the Sportcraft Boat Ramp Park, we have up to 2.5 years. We can occupy that area once construction begins. And it was less because we wanted to have minimal, well, we're going to have some impacts, but we wanted to minimize our impacts to the users around that area. And so those were what was approved in the ballot, and that's what we are enforcing with the project and in the specs. And that was it. So if we have any, I guess, questions?
Tim, you had a question there.
Yeah, I do. By putting easement through the Sportcraft Marina boat launch, does that mean that it's going to be unusable for 2.5 years to anybody that wants to launch a boat?
You want me to answer that?
Go ahead. I was going to say, we'll field those answers. Go ahead, Alan. You can answer that.
Okay. No, our intention is to leave that boat ramp open and functioning the entire time, the entire duration of construction, except for there's 2 1-week closure periods that are allowed. And that's when we're constructing the temporary work bridge over the top of the boat ramp. And then when we tear it out, when we deconstruct it, because all the work around the foundations of the bridge has to be done off of a temporary work bridge that's going to be built out on piles and timbers. And so when that work goes over the boat ramp, we have to close it for safety reasons. And so we're allowing for 1 week for that work to happen, and then 1 week for deconstruction. So
very good, thank you. And my last question is estimated time of completion for phase 1.
For this package, or for all of phase 1?
No, you start in April of next year, and when do you think it'll be complete for this phase 1 that you're talking about?
Okay, so for this bridge, which is there's 4 different phases within phase 1, or 4 different sequences, I guess, within phase 1. But for all the bridge work and all the work we just went over, we expect that to be complete in 2026.
Oh, okay.
So, and the main reason for that is we've got, because of the substructure is so large and requires so much just coordination and work, that a lot of that work can only be done between July and October, because there's a in-water work window with the agencies basically to protect the fish. And so we have to work the entire schedule, and that bridge, everything associated with the bridge and the foundation and everything is the critical path for the schedule. And so in order for us to kind of sequence the workout, we anticipated taking four of those in-water work windows before we can complete it.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, two questions. First of all, you mentioned the 4 years on John Storm Park. Did I understand you say correctly that 4 years was specified in the ballot measure? I don't remember that. And if you could answer that, and then I'll go on with my second comment.
So I'm going to say that it was. Brian, can you confirm that? It was in the ballot? Oh, we lost Brian.
Brian, if you're talking, you're on.
No. Yeah, no. I lost myself. You did not lose me. I was trying to pull the ballot measure real quick to answer the question. Sean, if you'd be kind enough maybe to ask your next question, I'll pull up the ballot measure and give you an affirmative answer instead of guessing.
Sure. And my second question is related to compensation for taking over that park. And I was wondering if either of you could expand on that. I've heard that several years ago at your presentation, but it's probably worth revisiting what the plans are for, I believe there's some compensation that you have to give back to the city, kind of like a rental of that space. So if you could talk to that effect, I'd appreciate it.
You want me to cover that, Stephanie?
Yep, go ahead, Alan.
So the parking lot area under the bridge is part of ODOT's actual right of way. Even though it's used by the park, it's actually leased back to Oregon City. The park proper itself is that's what we're working with Oregon City with right now on an intergovernmental agreement, which we call an IGA, and it's part of. So we're going through the right of way acquisition process, and so we've evaluated what the rental cost is for that. And so that's what we're negotiating with Oregon City right now. What that compensation looks like, I couldn't tell you, because, we're doing some work for Oregon City as well on some of the local streets. So that's part of all of the intergovernmental kind of negotiations that happen on situations just like this. So there will be something, but I can't tell you what that is at this point.
But we did have an appraiser look at it, look at the cost, the area, and come up with a value for that 4 years of temporary use.
Correct.
And you're not able to say what that amount is, though? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we just started negotiating with them last week. So
no, I'm not asking what the negotiations are entailed. Obviously, that's probably not for this meeting. But what was the appraised value of that time?
That is also not
okay.
Open to be disclosed at this point.
Okay, then the follow-up question on that is because it's never been brought up in a meeting prior, in a park-related meeting. How you mentioned that you'll be doing other work on other streets. I guess from our standpoint, it was very simple. You were renting some park space and paying us back. And so now are we muddying the waters with other departments within the city because you're going to be doing road work possibly that, they can trade off costs on? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's a great question. And I don't have an answer for you on that.
Okay.
But I see your point. I see exactly what you're saying. From the park standpoint, we're also doing a lot of landscaping work too when we put things back. We're also providing some parking and
landscaping's obvious, but to us, this board, there's 8 of us here, and we're representatives of the city that won't be able to use that park for 4 years. So our number one goal is simply what compensation does the parks receive for that 4 years rental? And I guess I'm hearing we won't know that answer today.
Yeah, and that's part of our part of our review process is going to be meeting with the Parks
Okay.
Department, and they are privy to the numbers and all of this information. So
Okay.
they are, I mean, we are talking with all departments. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So I guess
So
we'll
hi-
go back to the first question.
Oh, I was just going to offer that, Sean. Yeah. Yeah. So the ballot measure in the explanatory statement that accompanied the ballot measure did specify 4 years.
Okay. Thank you. I asked the question because my memory was 2.5 years. Maybe I was confusing it with the sport craft. 4 seems a lot longer. I would almost be curious if Karen would be willing at some point after this meeting to go back and look through the old minutes to see if we were told incorrectly.
Sean, the 2.5 years is for Sportscraft Landing, and indeed that duration was cut short to minimize impacts to users of the boat ramp, particularly because of the safety concerns that the additional structure and water structure has to users. So there was a concerted and forced effort to remove that work bridge off the south side as quickly as we could. But I'd encourage you to go back and look. But in doing so, we had to maintain access, and that access was always intended to be maintained on the north side of the bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll apologize if I ever misled you in our previous meetings. Otherwise.
Brent, you had some questions or comments?
Yeah, guys. Hey, actually, I have a question and a comment. So first, my question, and nice presentation, Alan and everybody. And this is going to sound a little obvious, but I'm assuming phase 1 is before phase 2. Is that correct in this project? Okay. The reason why I ask is I, live here in Oregon City, but yet sometimes I commute to my place of employment out in Beaverton. So obviously I use I-205 quite frequently. My question with this phase 1, given that this is a project, is what are some of the risks in your risk management plan for this project that you've identified that could delay that 2026 date?
Well,
and Alan, I see you're laughing at that. What is up with that?
Well, because the risk are we had those slides really cover our risk. It's the bridge, it's the foundations and the drilled shafts, and that's really what the big risks are for this project. Because anytime you go underground, I mean, we've done a ton of exploration, we've done a ton of lab work, and we've done calculations, and we've done all kinds of work to try to minimize that risk. But anything underneath the ground, especially when we're talking 200 feet deep, is always a risk. And we're reaching out to industry experts. We just held a meeting last week with all the drilled shaft contractors on the West Coast that do this work. And there aren't very many projects in the country that have shafts that are like this. And so that's really the high risk element for this first part of the project is the shaft work. And so we met with all these contractors, and we got a lot of great feedback, a lot of good suggestions, because we want to make sure we get it right the first time, and that and we minimize the risks. So I mean, I felt really good coming out of that meeting. We have a lot of great information. We've got a team of experts on this, but that's our biggest risk, really.
Okay, interesting. And so, without going into details with the mitigation and contingency plan, how much of an impact do you see if you do come upon a risk in the delay of this project?
Well, I mean, anything related to the bridge, which we feel is a critical path for this first phase. Any unknown, any risk that happens that actually comes to fruition is gonna impact the schedule. Now, whether that's a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months, that's entirely dependent on what actually happens out there. The material supply and procurement is another big risk that we're tracking, just given the volatility of the market right now with steel and concrete and oil. So that also could play a factor in the materials needed for this bridge aren't something we can just drive down the road and pick up. They're going to have to come from all across the country. So we've seen delays on projects where they have a lot of unique steel elements that are coming from Texas or from the South, that see delays, totally out of our control, just with natural disasters and whatnot in the transportation of just on the transportation line. So there's a ton of factors. We can't predict them all, but that's what we're going to be trying to track and working with our contractor. And, if something like that does happen, then we work with our contractor to try to mitigate it and see how we can, make that time up and accelerate other parts of the schedule. So.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. That was an honest answer. I appreciate that. My next comment is there is another project that's going to take place while this project is going on. That's on a major development down near exit 10 down near the Home Depot where the old Oregon City dump is. And really my comment is Oregon City citizens, because I'm somebody who lives in Park Place right above Home Depot, we're really going to be impacted by these two major projects that are going on, both the I-205 development and this development for down near the Home Depot area. So is there any coordination with the city in terms of that?
So we're working with the city. So Stephanie, we are working with the city. We have bi-weekly meetings set up to coordinate the project, any projects that are going on. We're going to be showing them our detours and our traffic control plans, and then hopefully making sure that whatever construction is going on, we're not going to be detouring them or closing roads concurrently to cause more problems and issues for the traveling public. So we have been coordinating with Oregon City on the projects.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Karen?
Yes, and sorry, I may have missed something. I'm having power blips at home and my router went out for a while. Is all of the funding actually finally packaged for this? Is question number one. And number two, thank you, Sean. I don't want to go back and reread the minutes, but I'm assuming that depending on overhead progress, Sportcraft may be closed more than once, depending on what's going on above the launch.
Okay, well, to address your first question about funding, we do not have all of our funding in place yet. That is one of the top priorities in the current legislative session. They're looking at, there's a variety of sources, there's a variety of options that are being considered right now on the table. But we have been reassured that when we come at it, when they come out of that session, that there will be funding for this, for what you see on this screen here. The remaining packages of work are going to have to, that's still something that we're going to have to, plan out and figure out how we're going to fund the rest of it. So, but it's a huge priority. It's a huge commitment from everybody, up to the director's office at the state to fund, all of this project. So, and can repeat the second question again about it was about the overhead work.
Overhead work over the boat launch.
You're
talking about a limited amount of time, but is that the only amount of time, or could there be additional time due to overhead work?
Well, I think the plan right now is, what we're planning on allowing the contractor to do is have 2 separate 1-week periods where they can go build the temporary bridge over it and then deconstruct that. We feel that's adequate time. And so those are the ones, that's what's kind of guaranteed. Now there are going to be situations like, for instance, when we're doing the bridge slide and we've got the freeway shut down, we probably, I'm assuming the contractor will want to not have the ramp open during that weekend either, as they slide that massive bridge, just for safety reasons. Likewise, when they do, when they're doing concrete, if there's a concrete pour right over the top of it, there may be a few hours, where it's probably not safe. So those are all the things that we're going to have to continue to work out with a contractor when we get them on board, to figure out what their schedule is, how they plan on doing the work. But we are making every effort on our part to ensure that the closures of that are minimized as much as possible.
Thank you, Alan.
Derek?
This is probably a question for Alan, but with this major construction in the river with the bridge, is there any situation that could arise that would alter the flow of the river farther down toward Clackamette Park that might affect our decision on the boat ramp at that park in the future?
I mean, I'm not. I will not venture to try to predict Mother Nature, but as a direct result of this project, Brian, you want to take this?
Yeah. I'll jump into this one.
Brian,
only because before everyone joined, I mentioned I'm one of the old timers on the project, and we did predict Mother Nature for a couple of reasons. This question was asked by Oregon City and was also asked by the State Marine Board about what impact the reconfigured bridge may have, in particular to Sportcraft Landing, because Marine Board has a funding interest in that, as well as the downstream docks, because as y'all are probably aware, it accumulates large debris. And as a mitigation measure, there was a series of dolphins you put just upstream of that dock in order to deflect the debris and minimize impacts to it. So we did do a hydraulic analysis to look at what the difference in hydraulics would be, both accelerating and decelerating. So meaning where might there be additional sediment accumulation versus an additional scour hole. And we looked at that in particular to both of those facilities and found no discernible difference from what's being experienced today. So we don't expect that the reconfiguration of the bridge would create a deposition or a scour zone that would generate an issue for either one of those facilities.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
Anybody else on PRAC that had any questions or comments? Okay, Alan. Thank you, Stephanie, Brian, your team. Appreciate you guys sharing this with us. Keep us up to date.
Yeah. Thank you for having us, and we're happy to come back anytime. So.
Yes, if you have any questions, just let us know too. We can respond.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right. Bye.
Okay, so now we have Jerry Herman, who's the president of Rivers of Life Center, and he's going to speak to us about mitigation funding. Jerry, you ready? Kendall, do we have Jerry with us? I thought he was here. Now I don't see him.
Let me double check to see if he's having any issues.
If we need to, we can move on and come back.
Give me 1 second.
Okay. Tom, get ready just in case.
Will do.
I did get a voicemail from Jerry, so let's move on, and I'll listen to the voicemail and see if there's an issue.
Okay, sounds good. We'll move on. We've got Tom Gaskell with us. Going to speak to us about Greater Oregon City Watershed Council Community Enhancement Grant proposal. So Tom, it's all yours now.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for having me tonight to speak with you. My name is Tom Gaskell, and I'm the reasonably new executive director of the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council. So I began with the council here in early April. And prior to that, I was working at the Oregon Zoo. I was laid off during COVID. And so I landed downstream at the council. And I'm real happy about that. I guess it's not exactly downstream. It's kind of upstream and over, I guess is how I'd say it. What I have to present tonight is a project that the council is interested in pursuing with Oregon City and also with Clackamette Community College. And I only have a few slides, but I'll share my screen with you now. Do I have permission to do that?
Yeah, go ahead. You should be set up to do that.
Okay, let me make sure I've got it to full screen here. And then, I think hang on a second. I think I jumped in too quickly here. All right, let me try this. Share, and then, okay, are you seeing that?
Yep.
Okay. So we are working on a grant proposal right now for the community enhancement program. And this grant proposal is in partner actually with Jerry Hierman, with the Rivers of Life Center, as well as the Clackamette Community College, and we would like to partner with you, Oregon City, specifically with Abernethy Creek Park. The project is called Community-Based Learning and Habitat Restoration in the Abernethy Creek Basin. And what we are proposing in our work with you, I met with John Waverly and Doug Neely down at Abernethy Creek Park to talk a little bit about this area. This area is particularly significant to the Watershed Council, and you may be aware that the Watershed Council has done work in Abernethy Creek Park in terms of habitat enhancement in the past. What I am interested in and the council is interested in doing is expanding our education and outreach efforts in this area to try to educate people more about the work of the Watershed Council in the Abernethy Creek Basin. And there are very few opportunities, as I've noticed in my time working with the council, to put people near the banks of Abernethy Creek and to have them understand the work that we do and why the habitat restoration work of the council all the way up into the basin is important. And so this project really has two components. One is at Abernethy Creek Park, and the other is proposed at the Environmental Learning Center at Clackamette Community College, which is the headwaters of Newell Creek. So the proposal here is really fairly simple. We would work with a youth core crew from Jerry Hierman's Rivers of Life Center that would help us to remove invasive species along the shoreline of the park and to plant native species, and then also to create a simple trail. And I'm going to jump to the next slide here just as a schematic. And you are probably all familiar with John Adams Street and with the park and the bend in the creek right there. I suggested I highlighted this as an area of interest because really a fundamental part of this project is to do design work on the trails and the habitat enhancement. And so we would work with the city's Parks and Recreations Department to lay out the trail. I would like to incorporate the youth and also community volunteers in that process so that there is really community support as well as youth engagement in understanding how a trail is laid out and why. And the trail itself would be built to the standards that you as the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and that the Parks and Recreation Department would expect. This would be a modest trail. This is not going to be highly developed. Really, the hope here is for a couple of viewpoints that overlook the creek that are safely back away from the creek so that we're not putting any visitor in a precarious situation. But this would really create kind of a nice opportunity to highlight the native plants in the area, to highlight invasive species that have been removed or that need continued maintenance for removal. John suggested that he could use assistance. So one of my goals in this project would be that we recruit volunteers for the Watershed Council that would be able to help the parks with the maintenance of this site in particular. The total project duration is 1 year, so would begin with planning in July and August of this year, but really on the ground work would not take place until the fall, and then plantings, of course, in the planting season in the winter, and then returning in the spring for more maintenance and removal of invasive species. 2 outreach events would be planned for here. These would be one in the fall to kind of introduce the project, and then one in the spring, kind of tail end, to talk about what's been achieved. In terms of landowner outreach, Doug Neely and I will be working together to talk to folks along John Adams Street who are adjacent to the park to assess their interest, if that's appropriate, depending on your support or not. And then really, I recognize and in discussions with John Waverly, this is kind of a park that has natural attributes to it, and I understand the history behind it having to do with flooding of Abernethy Creek. And so there's not a plan for high level of development, I think, in this park. It's meant to be kept natural, and that is certainly my desire, and I believe the desire of the Watershed Council. So beyond that, I think it's probably a good time for me to stop and listen for your questions.
Great. Tom, thank you very much. Brent, why don't you go ahead?
Hey, Tom, great presentation. Thank you. I'm just curious, how many different invasive species are down in the Abernethy Creek City Park area?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a part of this work will inventory that. I have not seen a full-on inventory, but just in the walk with Doug and John that day, I saw probably a half a dozen that I could identify offhand. And last visit, I was there yesterday with my wife. I was showing her some project ideas. And, I think one of the keys here is going to be to work with John and figure out what his priorities are for invasive removal, because we can't get them all, and we want to be careful. These are some of the bank areas here are not very stable. One of the hopes would be that our native plantings would stabilize the stream. You can imagine the Watershed Council has a pretty high interest in success in this area. We have endangered species in the coho, and the lamprey are a species of concern that are just adjacent to this area. And I really see fantastic opportunity to enhance this park for its natural attributes, and then use that as a way to educate people about what the Watershed Council's work is. And we'd love to do that in partnership with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Karen, go ahead.
Where does the Parks Department stand on either of them or both of them?
I'm sorry, Karen, I don't think I understood the question. I heard you say
that was from Jonathan.
Oh, okay, fair.
And I thought I saw him on.
Yeah, no, I'm on.
No,
I met with Tom and I'm supportive of their work at the area. I can use any help I can get.
Okay, so do we want action out of this? Do we want to put it on next month's agenda for action? Where are we going with this?
Well, we'll get to that part. First, what we want to do right now is just open it up to PRAC members for questions for Tom about his program, about anything about the plants and different things. And then we'll talk a little bit about the direction.
Okay, and I will say I'm supporting both, especially with Jonathan's support. And Jerry Herman is now on. He had the wrong link for the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Let's stick with what we got here. Any other PrAC members with questions or comments? Any questions for Tom at all? Okay, so Tom, what is it that you need from us here tonight?
Sure. So, this is all at the stage of a proposal that I am writing or have largely written at this point, and a letter of support simply stating that the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee would like to see this work happen would be hugely helpful to our proposal. This is one that I think if it's necessary, I'm happy to share. I shared a draft of the proposal with John, and it's been updated a little bit since then, but there is narrative in there that could be drawn from for a simple letter of support. And again, I'm not asking for an in-kind commitment of city resources for this. However, if you felt that was appropriate and you wanted to state something to that effect, just based on the typical maintenance that occurs at the park, would happily take it, because match dollars are always helpful in any kind of a grant proposal. But again, I don't require that. I'm simply looking for a statement of support that you would like to see this project happen.
Okay, so if we were to get you a letter of support, then what do you do with that letter? Where do you take that, and what is that? And then how does that benefit your program?
Sure. So that letter of support would go in along with the grant proposal. The proposal, unfortunately, there was a mistake in the outline, and I thought initially it was due June 11th. It's due June 1st, which is Tuesday, close of business. But I've been told that letters of support can come in after that and will still be accepted. But I would submit that as a part of the PAC grant proposal that we would, turn into the enhancement, the community enhancement grant program.
So with or without our letter of support, it certainly doesn't halt your program. But if I'm understanding you right, the more letters of support you get certainly would strengthen your proposal and your ask. Is that what I'm understanding?
It would. I think it demonstrates that this is serving the city in a positive fashion. And, as the grant reviewers look at that, I think anytime that they see that, particularly with a stakeholder, I mean, this is your property, this isn't the Watershed Council's property. And so that shows that the stakeholder has interest. And that's how we work as a Watershed Council. We don't, we really are working with the community and with stakeholders. We don't manage property at this point ourselves. Okay,
great. Thank you. Jonathan, would you mind jumping on again with us here? I got just a couple of things. I agree. I hear what you say, Jonathan, about taking all the help you can get. I mean, help is always nice. But I guess my other question, on the other side of that is, if this program didn't go through, Jonathan, what would that mean for what Tom is trying to do? Would it mean that it never gets done? Would it mean that it just takes a little longer? Would it mean that it's going to get done anyway, but it's just going to cost the city money? Like, what does that mean if this doesn't happen?
What it would mean if this doesn't go forward would be, they're talking about resources, additional resources that we don't currently have. And so you're talking about, perhaps us having to use more pesticide in the area, whereas I know that they've gone in and done, hand pulls or removals. They're also going to be adding additional plant material, native plant material to the area, which will help stabilize the banks. At this current point in time, we don't have any plans for anything like that at this park site. So, basically this is just it's a win for us because we're removing invasives, we're adding additional natives, and it's an area that we don't have designated funds for these specific items.
So some of it, if I'm understanding you right, would not get done because it's just not even on our list. And some of it would get done, but maybe in a way that's just not organic. I mean, would you be using more pesticides and less poles and less natural ways of remedying this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So some of it might get done, but in a less desirable way. And a good portion of it just wouldn't get done at all.
Right.
Okay. Brent?
Hey guys, I do have a question, and this ties in with the monarch butterfly presentation earlier. And I'm asking this question because I honestly don't know the answer, but is milkweed a native invasive species plant, or is it native to Oregon?
Would you like me to answer that, or do you want, John, were you going to answer that?
No, if Tom or John, if either of you could answer it, that would be great.
Sure. John, I'll give it a go first. I am familiar with milkweed. It is not native to Oregon. It's not native to the Willamette Valley. It is used, it's not invasive either. It is a plant that is certainly attractive to pollinators, and it's one that's known for its benefits to monarch butterflies. But to me, the interest that I would have here would not necessarily be to use milkweed as much as it would be to perhaps look at this through the lens of native pollinators and what kinds of native plants we could use to support pollinators. There's tremendous work being done right now throughout the Portland metro area with pollinator gardens and, lots of different species. And if that's an enhancement that the group is interested in, we could certainly work with Jerry and the Rivers of Life folks to see what they could come up with for a planting plan there.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
Any other questions? Okay, so there's not a proposal here. We're not going to make a recommendation to the commission or anybody. I don't think we need a motion. In fact, I know we don't need a motion. We just need to decide amongst ourselves if we support a letter in support of Tom's project, and if we want to provide that to him. We don't need a motion for that. Any comments on that, or anybody want to start that piece of discussion?
Are we making that decision to support it right now, Troy?
I think we need to, one way or the other. Tom would, it
would be very helpful.
That letter could come after, but it's going to be better for him to get it, prior and have it as soon as possible.
I will start that conversation. I say emphatically, I 100% support this project.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts in agreement or otherwise? It's okay to also agree just to second that. Tim?
I agree. I think that there's no downside to the city, and I think Tom is a great idea to clean up that area right there. So I'm in support.
Thank you.
Karen, you have your hand up. Is that you have it up again for additional comments you want to make? You're muted. Oh, there you go.
I'm sorry, but for the purpose of the record, I move that we support options 1 and 2 of the presentation that has been made for the John Adams Park.
There's not an appropriate time for a motion on this. There's no proposal.
It's not inappropriate. It's a letter where we need.
Yeah, we're gonna follow Robert's Rules of Order, which does not bring us to a motion for a letter of support. We do have a motion on the table, so we have to do something with the motion now that it's here. However, it's not an appropriate time for a motion. So if we don't have a second, we'll let it die, and then we'll proceed with deciding if we're going to still support this with a letter. So do we have a second for the motion? Okay, we have no second, so the motion died. So now is there any discussion continuing for the letter of support for Tom?
again, I support a letter for Tom.
And I will go and put my 2 cents in here. I definitely support the letter. Tom, I do appreciate the clarity and how clear your presentation was. As much as I would love to do more than just a letter, I think everybody I know everybody on PRAC is aware. Kendall and his staff are very aware of just the deferred maintenance and other things we have going on right now that's taking resources. And of course, here, I don't know if you know this or not, Tom, just to make sure it's on the record for those watching, PRAC is not in a position to make a decision for monetary contributions anyway. So we will not be able to include that in the letter.
Sure.
That's just not our jurisdiction. We're not able to make those decisions at all. But I definitely support this. Brent, is there anybody who's not in favor of a letter of support?
I'm in favor of it, although I will say that I can't hear anything that Karen's saying. So whatever happened there, I'm out of it. I have no idea.
Thank you for saying that, Derek, because I was going to say I couldn't hear what Karen said either.
Got some audio issues, I guess, with that. Okay.
Still like a motion.
Karen, you're coming across as a whisper.
Yeah, really hard to hear you.
Not sure why. Got volume all the way up. I'm clearly in favor, but I still think there should be a motion on the record.
Okay. It sounds like I don't hear any opposition. So stop me if I'm wrong, but I'm not hearing any. So with that, Tom, we can get you a letter of support.
Wonderful.
I want to make sure that is clear and the way you would like it. So if you can get maybe a couple of bullet points, 2 or 3 bullet points for us, then I will definitely, Kendall, I'm going to take that task on. I'm not going to put that on your plate since I'm the one signing it. And you know how I am with you. I don't want to add things to your plate we don't need to add to your plate. So if you're okay with it, Kendall, I'll do that. Okay, I figured you'd be all right with that. So, but Tom, if you want to get my email address from Kendall, then you can just go ahead and email me directly and I will get you a letter and I can email that to you. I can sign it and email it over. If you want a wet signature on it, I can find a way to get it to you in person. Otherwise, I can scan it and email it to you.
Wonderful. I truly appreciate it. And thank you very much for the time. And I will say, I know that resources are always limited, but outreach events, you're welcome to come to. I'll make sure to invite you. And my goal is that they're celebratory and, pulling weeds can be fun. So planting's even more fun, but pulling weeds can be a good time. So great. Very, very good, Brent. I sure will. Well, thank you all for your time, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
All right. Thank you very, very much. So Kendall, do we have Jerry with us now?
Yes.
I do see Jerry on.
Yes.
So Jerry, thank you for being with us. Jerry's the president of Rivers of Life Center, and he's going to speak to us about mitigation funding.
Or maybe not.
Jerry, you're muted.
Jerry, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you. You're muted.
John, do we have a way to unmute him?
I've tried to ask him to unmute, but I have not been successful.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on. At least we know we've got him with us. Melissa, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, we're going to move on to Melissa Tierney, Recreation Director. She's going to speak to us about Oregon City Parks and Recreation Scholarship Program and grant funding. Melissa, it's all you.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me go ahead and get this slide up. You guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, yeah, my name is Melissa Tierney, and I'm a recreation programmer over on the aquatic and recreation side of things. And one of the wonderful things that I get to do is help put on camps for everyone in Oregon City. And I'm here tonight to talk to you guys about our scholarship efforts that we have been making this year. So tonight's presentation, tonight's presentation is going to cover some of the restructuring that we did with our scholarships, the partnerships that we have developed, the outreach efforts that we have been making in the community, and then I will talk about some grant funding that we have received to benefit our camps. So with our summer camp scholarships, we are offering 2 camps this summer. And when we really started to look at our cost recovery for camps, we also saw that with some of our prices increasing, that there would be a need for more financial assistance to help people participate in our camps this summer. And with that, this included finding a funding source to be able to provide this for more people. And this is where, hold on. This is where the Oregon City Parks Foundation came in and helped partner with us to provide more opportunities for community members to attend our camps this summer. And the Oregon City Park Foundation began a fund to honor the late Elijah Dean Hoff to help enable children to participate in our park and recreation day camps. And because of the efforts that they made, they were able to get $2,000 from a grant through that On Point was offering. And with that money, as well as the support of additional donors that had donated to that memorial fund, we have really been able to offer more scholarships and financial assistance than we have in previous years. And because of this partnership and what they are really doing for us and for this community, we are really able to allow anyone who needs financial assistance to participate in our camps. And with this, we have been doing a lot of community outreach and letting people in Oregon City know that we have this funding available. Part of what I have been really working on is getting involved in a lot of different community groups. And I've reached out to the Oregon City School District and a lot of their employees and city members of other community groups, and have been able to get connected with a community resource group that has allowed us to share information to various Oregon City School District employees and other organizations. And then we have also been able to be a part of Oregon City Together, where we not only were able to share the information about our camps and the scholarships, but able to promote our junior camp counselor program, which is also an opportunity for youth aged 13 to 17 to attend our camps for free and also develop some leadership and job skills. And then one of the really beneficial groups that I've been able to participate in is attending a Latinx community leader group who helped me get information out to migrant communities in Oregon City and helped me get more information out to those families and giving me ideas on how to do that. And a couple of things that came from those conversations that we have been able to do is, one, we were able to take our scholarship application form and actually get it translated into Spanish so that people where Spanish is their first language are able to submit the applications for these scholarships. And then two, with our city website, we had actually discovered that a lot of the information that we have been putting out is through our city website, and it was only in English, and I was able to reach out to our IT department, and because of that, our city website now has the ability to be translated in the top 10 different languages that are used in Oregon right now through a Google Translate option. And then we also reached out to 378 of our past camp participants from the previous couple of years to let them all know that we are doing camps this year. It's a little different based off of the circumstances and the guidelines that we are following, but we're still doing them, and that we have scholarships available for anyone that needs it. And then, so just a little bit of statistics from previous years to this year. Previously, we have awarded 2 scholarships during our summer camps in previous summers on average. But this year, we've actually to date been able to award 28 people with scholarships to attend our camps this summer. And that number is actually continuing to grow. We just got 3 more submissions today, so it's actually up to 31. And then the percentage that we're covering for the cost of our camps is typically between 25 and 75%. In the majority of the scholarship requests we are covering more closer to that 75% of the cost of the camp. And then I'd like to talk to you guys, something that's been really exciting for us is that we were able to get a grant this year through the Oregon Camp Grant Fund, and it was in the amount of $48,770. And this money was really given to us for COVID relief, as well as enabling us to do some facility maintenance. We were able to do some more soundproofing to one of our wall dividers to be able to have more camps in one space. And then to truly just benefit our camps, just not for just this summer, but for future summers. And then as far as moving forward with our camps and our scholarships, we're going to be continuing to keep track of our scholarship usage and how many people we are reaching and how many people are applying for them. We're going to keep doing our community outreach and involvement in different groups throughout the city and seeing if we are still missing anybody that may need this financial assistance into future years. And then we're going to continue to keep increasing our funding opportunities for people in our camps. One of the really exciting things is I just got an email from the Parks Foundation that they had already gotten another $2,500 put aside in the Memorial Fund for next summer. So not only do we already have funding starting for next summer, but I know that this is going to keep continuing for years on. And then at that, I'd like to thank you guys for letting me come and update you guys on this tonight. And I'd like to open it up at this point for any questions or comments.
Karen, you have some questions or comments? If you're talking, we cannot hear you. We still can't hear you, Karen. Not sure if you're talking or not. We'll let you figure out the audio that you got going on there. Brent, go ahead.
Hey, Melissa, great presentation. I'm just kind of curious, how many different camps do you run?
This summer, we are running 2 different camps.
Okay.
We're doing one that's going to be a full day camp for people looking for that full day care. And then we're doing one that's going to be a half day that'll run from noon to 5. Typically in previous summers, we've done a third additional camp, but we were unable to do that this year due to some of the COVID restrictions.
So let me expand my question a little bit more. In these camps, between the 2 that you just mentioned, what are some of the activities that occur in these camps?
Oh, so it's your general day camp. We actually run this summer, for example, we're doing 12 weeks. Previous summers, we usually do about 9 to 10. It depends on how long the summer is, but each week has a different theme. So as far as like the content in the camp, they're doing different games and activities and crafts. In previous summers, we've done like field trips and swimming at the pool, but we'll do different themes each week. So we'll have a week where it might be sports themed, and another week might be a theater type camp, or the next week might be more like we're doing a week this year for like jungle explorers type things.
Oh, cool.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I see none. Melissa, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
What?
All right, let's go back and give Jerry a try.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jerry.
Incredible.
Welcome, Jerry.
Well, John Waverly knows all my problems, and I'm not going to share more with you than I have. But tonight, we had a Zoom meeting set up for the Oregon Senators, which I'm a chorus president of, and we want to do harmony in the park sometime for you, the biggest chorus in the Northwest. Okay? We want to do it in barbershop harmony style, but guess what? My young guy, because I can't see with Balloony, he put up Oregon Senators instead of you guys. I'd like to be with you too. So having shared that with you, what I wanted to do is talk about tonight. There's about 14 slides, 15 slides total that Kendall's going to move for me. I need to kind of see them, although they have them, and I have them in front of me too. And Karen, I thank you for calling me because a call works good for me. All right, so let me talk a little bit about funding opportunities for parks that you might not have thought about. 5 years ago, I approached the city after hearing about Gladstone and Westland and other communities looking at funding that came out of problems that need to be solved in the Portland Harbor area. It was called mitigation funding, and there was a fund set up called the Lower Harbor Trust Fund. It became an EPA fund that all the industries had to contribute to unless they wanted to get sued. And EPA was going to sue them. And when the EPA sues, they mean business. So they all got together because of Governor Kitzhaber's efforts at that time, our previous governor, and contributed to a fund and what they could do within their area from the Broadway Bridge down to the Columbia, 15 miles, they could do there. But they also knew that if they did too much habitat enhancement, they could not use their industrial lands. So they decided to work with the governor at that time to establish a fund that would allow improvement projects to occur as long as habitat was involved for parks and recreation areas, open space, natural resource areas, all the way, guess what, to Willamette Falls, where we're at. So what I'm going to do real quickly is tell you about some of those issues. That's a lot of money. It's $500 million that still exists, and it's being drawn down because a lot of communities are interested in this fund, all right? At this date, Oregon City has heard the presentation. Again, 5 years ago, I went to the city staff at that time, talked to the mayor at that time, and long and short of it, they thought it was too good to be true. Meanwhile, Gladstone was making improvements, which they did not have to pay for their parks and open space areas, and I think it's time for Oregon City. So It's a large fund, I mentioned that. Projects can include parks and open spaces as long as they have a natural resource value. Tom, who you talked to earlier before, was talking about their interest in the lamprey, eel, and so forth. Do you know that Clackamette Cove is the largest spawning area in the Willamette River below the falls for lampreys, which means that's a very eligible area. And so are the areas in and around and in Clackamette Park. All right. So the city's Parks and Recreation program can benefit by this. I have a letter which I want you to think about from your standpoint. I wrote a draft letter for you to consider. It's not for me. It's for you and Parks to ask your city commission to allow this kind of opportunity to move forward. Our second slide. Thank you, Kendall.
Ah, there we go.
All right. Many years ago, in 1992, Mayor John Williams said, if we're going to do a waterfront master plan, then we got to look at every waterfront area, Abernethy, the Clackamas, the Willamette, everything in and around Willamette Falls. And that was done by Walker Macy folks, very capable landscape architects. It's about 50 pages long, and it was adopted by ordinance in 2002, which means it still binds in terms of coming to terms with how you deal with the built environment interface with the natural environment. Next slide. Okay. In this case, I'm focusing in on some of your areas that have parks in them in the North End District. Of course, Abernethy Park you heard about earlier is one such. You got a new park that was supposed to happen in phase 2 of Clackamette Cove, yet to be determined. Then, of course, you have the park right at the confluence of the two rivers, Clackamette. All right. The North End District is a great area to do projects because they're in addition to the things I talked about, 12 acres of wetlands that were constructed when the jug handle, the movement of a bridge and crossing and so forth, was put in place for a previous landfill design. I think you remember that. All right. There are opportunities to link trails from Metro South, Washington Street area, end of the Oregon Trail, and so forth, through existing viaducts that were built for cattle. When 205 was built, they had to require 40-foot, 3 of them, 40-foot tall by 40-foot wide passages for cattle. And you know what? Those work real good for people too. I haven't seen any cattle lately. Next slide. All right, the mitigation ideas really that we were asking the city to embrace, and the Urban Renewal Board has asked the city administrator to move on this effort, was to establish basically the outlines of a district that might include mitigation methodologies, and then declare that simply as a mitigation district. It's nothing legally binding about it. It just simply says we're interested in doing some things in a certain area. Wouldn't it be nice if John Waverly and Kendall Reed had professional ecologists, biologists, and landscape architects come in and help work out design ideas for park improvements that you'd like to happen, but you don't have the funding for it? Guess what? In the areas where there are natural resource issues and the drainage flows to the Willamette or the Clackamas, that can happen. The mitigation funding is established by that Lower Harbor Trust Fund and a mitigation bank that has been established since that time, again, with a lot of money in it, as I mentioned to you. Professionals come in, landscape architects, engineers, hydrologists, and so forth, and help with the design to the city standards in the communities involved. Those professionals then contact agencies that need to be involved, like Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and all that. Sometimes we're afraid of those agencies. State Lands Division, I know that they can be tough. But when you have this kind of interrelationship with professionals working on your projects, they pave the way for things to happen. I think it's a really interesting idea. And the last thing is, once the projects get underway, they manage them in cooperation with the city. The city wants to expend staff time, they can, but they don't have to, because the final result is the mitigation projects happen. And then the last thing I like to talk about is there's a host fee that each community gets for hosting those improvements on their public lands. Next slide. I'll come back and answer any questions you might have. Everything in blue is waterways. Clackamette Cove, the Clackamas River, the Willamette River. I think you can see where we are. The Abernethy Creek and that little side channel that Tom was talking about is the area that he was talking about as one possible area for enhancements. There are targeted areas that are shown in red. These were all identified by the Waterfront Master Plan. Guess what? That Waterfront Master Plan from 2002, though it's never been used until now, is the framework to build the rapport to get the funding for projects in these various areas. Next slide. This is 1990s ideas for everything around Clackamette Park, the Oregon City Shopping Center, a body of water which was called at that time, what was it called? Well, it became Clackamette Cove, but it had another name. Parker Lagoon it was called, that's right. Washington Street et al. Clackamas County spent their staff time to come up with ideas. It's amazing. All these things in red were what they were suggesting back in 1990. These things are happening in Clackamette Cove. Things are already happening next to the Oregon City Shopping Center. And their whole idea was a master plan that would show the interface between the natural ecology and the built environment was needed. This already exists, and it's an important document. 1990. Next slide. Now, in 2016, the city contracted with very qualified people, Cascade Environmental Services, very professional people, biologists, engineers, planners, etc., to come up with an assessment of Clackamette Cove. And as you've heard by now, the cove has some water quality issues, which has to do with the water exchanging in and out of the cove, either naturally or arbitrarily because they can't get in or get out. And in this plan, they determined the kind of things that could be done to improve the cove as one area. The cove right now is ready for that mitigation funding to happen. And this process of getting the mitigation efforts moving would make the water quality things change in the cove, would change the entire dynamic of the cove, which is pretty much overgrown with a lot of invasives, but also a lot of good native plants, and make a beautiful area, walking trails and all the rest, fishing areas, anything that benefits the community and benefits wildlife is what the mitigation funding will support. Next slide. Okay, now, what others have got, I'm sorry. Okay, slide 8 there. This was an idea that we came up with some time ago. You know, the cove has a big rock bar out in front of it, and everybody's saying, oh my goodness, we'll have to dredge that every year. That accumulation is 40 years worth of gravel. 40. Now, in simple terms, that gravel with an existing city permit funded the work by the mitigation strategies I just talked about. The mitigation fund could come in and create a better channel for water to ingress and egress, build shallowing areas in the cove where it makes sense to do that, improve the circulation, and make sure that there's no more Oregon Health Authority assessments that say no human contact. You know that. There's been 3 years of no human contact assessments by the Oregon Health Authority. They didn't do it this last summer because they were too busy. We were all too busy dealing with the COVID. They didn't have time to deal with it. But this would help solve that. Everybody thinks a giant channel, we have to maintain that? No. Shallow grading and things like that with the gravel being used internally to the cove would make a huge difference. And that kind of shows you with the arrows where the water might circulate more naturally. Next slide. All right. Who has done what and what have others got? The city of Portland has gotten $300 million worth of improvements. The Pearl District, do you like the Pearl District? Well, I'm not sure I'll go there right now. Lots of folks around there that I haven't seen lately, or maybe I don't want to see. One way or the other, the Pearl District improvements were made possible in many cases by mitigation funding to take care of grading changes and so forth that would help water drainage from that entire profile there. Savi's Island, farther downriver, huge improvements have occurred there. It's a beautiful place to visit now with some built-in developments that would have never occurred there. Mitigation funding helped private development too. As long as it has a public and environmental benefit, it can be funded through mitigation funding. 1,000 acres of Portland have been enhanced through this method alone. City of Gladstone, 3 different park areas, Meldrum Bar Park, Dole Beach Park. And there's a park unnamed yet, I think we should name it for someone, right underneath the east approach to the north approach, excuse me, to the 1990 bridge. Some 50 acres of enhancement have occurred in those areas, and a few other areas farther on the end of Meldrum bring 100 acres of improvements in worth about $10 million that the city did not have to pay for. Design work was done, architects did their work, engineers did the planning, and ultimately the professionals worked to get the agency's approval. That's very important. Worked to get the agency approvals, which is hard to do. And because of that, some other things have happened for them that I'll show you a little later. City of Milwaukee is now in the process. Mayor Gamba, I met with him 2 weeks ago. I said, how's your project going? He said, it's amazing. We're going to get Kellogg Creek and Kellogg Lake established as both wetlands and a flowing creek instead of just a stagnant lake. All around it, I'm building vertical housing developments and other improvements for our economy because it's going to be a real asset for us. City of Westland is now looking at the whole thing, and Lake Oswego. We need to get in the queue. Slide 10, please. Next slide. Okay. All right. So what can we get? Improvements to Clackamette Park. The city's going to spend a lot of money on master planning, I assume. A couple $100,000, I suspect. That master planning for improvements, as long as wildlife habitat's included as a major component, or at least a concern of interest, mitigation funding can pay for that work. Trails, habitat, interpretive areas, and so forth. I know this would mean something to your budget, I'm sure. Improvements to Clackamette Cove. You know, the cove on one side, the northeast side, we've been keeping that up with John Waverly. And the long and short of it is that area is very clean. After the ice storm, we got that cleaned up. Homeless camps don't seem to appear there because we appear on my Rivers of Life Center youth about once a month and make a walkthrough and a cleanup of litter, debris, and all the rest. And we work with the city to make sure that code compliance has a chance to keep that area under surveillance without good trails and so forth. The cove could be a mecca for trails and fishing, overlooks, birding habitats, things like that. Whether or not there is a development, mitigation funding can happen right now. Washington Street, you have a planned development of large scale, 50 plus acres for a landfill. You know what? There's a bunch of habitat in there on the east flanks next to Park Place. Those areas are all eligible. And by the way, those folks behind that development are looking right now. 12 acres of wetlands next to Metro South Transfer Station, those are eligible. Those wetlands were built in requirements for when intersections were adjusted and so forth. They have no trails. They can link beautifully back into the viaducts that go underneath 205 I mentioned to you and seamlessly link the Cove, Washington Street improvements, and the Oregon Trail all together. All right, streetscape drainage and other areas that you might know about in various parts of your city that are near your parks, those are all eligible for the enhancement because they improve the water quality. Next slide. Slide 11. All right, now here's Meldrum Bar Park. I'm proud to tell you that that sign is made out of plastic lumber, by the way, and it's 40 years old, and it hasn't deteriorated yet. And by the way, it doesn't burn very well because it has a flame retardant built into it. I love plastic lumber. All right, Gladstone has 30 acres of improvements that have occurred. Total value almost 10 million. They get $300,000 to $400,000 per year as a host fee for being a place where those improvements for public benefit and wildlife benefit occur. Next slide. They include information stations, shelters for the public, fishing piers and fishing access. The amazing thing to me, and I know John might mention this, probably John Waverly, I love working with John, they have a boat ramp. And next slide, that boat ramp was silting in. So you see improvements that were made in trails and so forth in Gladstone, but their boat ramp was so full of silt, you had to walk across the silt to bring your boat up to the dock. The Marine Board, because of the relationship that they have with this mitigation funding and these people that are professionals that can work between the agencies to get things done, get the permitting, very valuable, those permits. That was dredged 12 feet deep. There's a brand new dock there, and they aren't going to have to maintain that for a long time because that dredging has been done and a brand new dock established. That was the benefit of having that association with the mitigation funding for their needs at Meldon Bar. Next slide. Okay, down further in the port of Milwaukee is Kellogg Lake. It used to be a free-flowing stream, but it had backwater conditions. It goes underneath Highway 99E. Back in the 1940s, someone decided it was a great idea to build a dam to make the lake into a real lake, even bigger than it was at that time. And of course, fish passage became an interest and concern. Mayor Gamba, National Geographic commercial photographer, national awards. Mayor Gamba has his whole staff and commission fully on board. They're now the recipients of major design work and professional guidance and professional management for their projects that will take that entire lake and make it into a series of both wetlands, some ponding areas and lake-like areas, and then also a free-flowing stream. So that project for him is probably worth $20 million, and he told me it's going to make possible economic development in association with it because people are going to love to see the final result. Final slide. What I'm asking you to consider, and I can't read this very well, so you might take a look yourselves, but I'm asking you folks to consider, and I'm also going to the Natural Resource Committee, which I helped co-found many, many years ago, and I'm going to the CIC, and I'm asking them each to write a letter from their respective bodies to the City Commission, encouraging this process to become a part of meeting your needs in parks and open spaces. And I'm not going to say it's going to solve everything, it won't, but it's a whole new flow of funding that you never thought of before that others have taken advantage of, and you can too. So this generally outlines what the idea is of we're redundant here. Somebody needs a wordsmith, that's better than me. But if you could consider sending this kind of letter to your city commissioners, because you're doing work for them as a volunteer, like I did many years on the Natural Resource Committee and am doing now, it would make a difference because they're ready to do something. They just can't believe it's so good. Well, it is good because other people have gotten the results. So I'm done with my presentation, more than happy to answer questions. And sometime I want to bring that big chorus I'm involved in to have harmony in your park.
Jerry, thank you very, very much. Brant, why don't you go ahead and lead us off with any questions you have?
Hi, Jerry. So I want to go back to your mitigation district method slide where you talked about the host fee going back to the city.
Yes.
I don't understand that. I don't understand how much the host fee is. Why is it paid back to the city? Who pays it? And where does it go to in the city?
All right, let me explain that. This, by the way, also works in private developments too. If the private development was to allow a portion of their project area suitable for wildlife habitat or fish and wildlife improvements to be made available, that's of value to getting the project to be hosted on those sites. In the case of the city, your parks and natural areas have value as host sites because it's hard to find sites to do these improvements on in the lower harbor. It's very hard because of the industrial nature to the land. So the trust fund trustees pay that fund. They determine what it's worth. They determine what the host fee is worth to their values of being able to continue business in Portland. Now, they still must make improvements to their lands and their waterways. But once they've made too many habitat improvements, those industrial lands, which is what they were, can't be used effectively. So they're happy to support a host fee for a public body like the City of Oregon City or Gladstone or Milwaukee to host those improvements on a given site. And I forgot to mention one important point. That hosting also includes a separate fund to maintain those areas, something I'm sure that the Parks and Rec staff here would feel good about. Did I answer the question?
Not really. There's something I'm missing.
Tell me what's missing.
I guess I'm missing, how much the host fee is, why is it paid back and where does it go in the city?
Well, I don't know where it goes in the city. In the case of Gladstone, it goes into their general fund because that's how they chose to use it. In the case of Milwaukee, Mayor Gamba intends to use it for his park and recreation needs. As far as who determines that value, it really has to do with what is the value of the improvements in those habitat areas upriver here, instead of it being in the lower harbor, up here, being hosted here, what is the value to those folks that are paying into that fund? Now, again, I must say that fund is the people that had to solve problems of habitat, water quality, and other problems in the lower harbor. It's easier for them to expend monies in addition to what they have to spend themselves in upriver areas like we have. We have some pretty good habitat, especially Clackamette Cove. Does that help?
It does, Jerry. I guess my final question is there anywhere where I could learn more about your organization, and where do you have information or a website where I can learn more about your organization?
Certainly do. We have our organization is called riversoflifecenter.org. Look up our website. We also have a YouTube site that shows our projects that we do and so forth. And, one of the things I want to clarify here, one of our commissioners, Frank O'Donnell, said, Jerry, what's in this for you? I said, you know what? Nothing. But my whole thing is I want youth employed, and that's what I do, employ at-risk youth and get them involved in these habitat projects and also general parks projects for you folks. I work with John on many projects. My issue is it's time to see the community get involved with these projects, and these funds also can include the support of volunteer groups or youth from the high schools, case Oregon City Senior High, Junior ROTC, paying them to be involved in doing these habitat projects. They like that. In the case of Gladstone, there's been a lot of youth involvement projects there over the years in those areas.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Karen, go ahead.
Okay, is this better?
Oh, yes.
Went to my new Chromebook. I've been through several of Jerry's presentations. Brent, this is a city thing. Jerry's trying to get city backing to pursue these funds. We've seen the problems on the Clackamas River with the buildup on the Gladstone side. Some of us that have grown up around here know about the problems with the other, what do I want to say? Okay, the confluence of the Willamette River and the Clackamas River used to be known as the rapids because the Clackamas River dumps rock constantly down, and this can actually help address some of that. I think all Jerry's asking for is a letter of recommendation to ask the city to look further into these funds. These are funds we don't have to pay for, things that we can use to make improvements that we need to make on the Clackamas River, the Cove, and at the confluence of the two rivers. So I'd recommend that a recommendation be made.
So thank you for saying that. And I really appreciate your perspective in regards to that. And I am always in favor of money that we don't have to take from the city budget. So thank you.
Karen, did you have any more to add?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Anybody else?
I recommend signing Jerry's letter. I think there's, again, no downsides to signing on to a program that will latch on to Superfund money that is available for our city. And there's certainly a lot of projects we could use. I just don't know who would take the ball from from there. I mean, it's like, all right, yeah, let's go do it, but which department and what person's going to jump on this project?
So Jerry, typically when you work with other cities, who does take it at that point?
Well, again, I'm the messenger here. I'm not working for other cities. I wish I was on this subject because there's some consultants that are doing very well off this, by the way. But in the case of the people that first attended the meeting with our administrator, Tony Conkle, were John Lewis. There was a consultant that did the waterfront master plan, Walker Macy. Also, the folks that were involved with the water quality study I alluded to very quickly for you. They were the people there, and then your mayor was involved in that at that time. Of course, that Mayor Holliday is not here right now, but he was involved. And what the Urban Renewal Board said back in November, 6 months ago or so, was they asked Tony to go ahead and advance this project and look into it to see if there was any pitfalls. There's nothing he's found that I'm aware of, because in the case of Gladstone and Milwaukee, it's going very well. So the real decision is who wants to lead this within the city. My attitude is if the community groups, you're an advisory committee. I was a part of the natural resources for 10 years, 15 years actually. If we want to advance the concept and let them make the decision, it's their decision about who they'd like to assign. I think Public Works makes a lot of sense, or perhaps your Parks Division to help at least keep an eye on this thing. But in the case of Gladstone, they simply did it with their Public Works people interacting with the city council. That's all they did.
Okay. And I appreciate that, Jerry, but my question though is not really who you suggest should take it, but with the other cities you've worked with, who have they designated to take it from that point?
Okay, that was what I was trying to clarify. In the case of Gladstone, it's then the Public Works Department interfacing with the city council to see what their desires were on their 3 projects. In the case of Mayor Gamba, he's assigned his assistant and city administrator and their Parks and Recreation people to interface with the mitigation process. Again, realizing there is some staff input, it's not as much you think because the professionals do the work.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Karen, did you have your hand up? Do you have more questions or comments?
Just chuckling because Jerry and I have been friends for way too long.
Too long.
I think the letter should be addressed to Mayor Rachel Lyles Smith,
absolutely,
City Manager Tony Conkle, and John Lewis as our Public Works Director.
Okay. I thought I saw another hand. Andy, did you have a hand up? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I second Tim's motion. Let's vote.
Was that an official motion, Tim?
Yes.
I apologize. I did not hear that as a motion. If I heard it as a motion, we would have had to stop the conversation for a minute, so I apologize. Okay, so we have a motion from Tim. We have a second from Andy. And before we vote, do we have discussion? Any further discussion, I should say? Any other comments? Okay. Kendall?
Tim West.
Aye.
Karen Morey.
Aye.
Troy Bollinger.
Aye.
Jeff Sargent.
Aye.
Derek Kugel.
No.
Andy Crump.
Aye.
Sean Datchler.
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp.
Aye.
That's all right.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. And we'll move on to permanent pickleball nets at Hillendale Park. Tim West has a presentation for us.
Well, thank you. And here, let me figure out how to share this screen and go from here. Ready? Aha. All right. So I looked at what the Park and Rec Advisory Committee is all about on the website, and it's about getting people out into parks and recs and using our facilities that we do have right there. All right. and I represent the Hillendale Pickleball Club, and we want to expand the availability of pickleball at the Hillendale site and have the city purchase 4 permanent pickleball nets. All right. So one of the things is that Hillendale Pickleball Club brings more people into the parks daily than any other activity in our city. So it's a huge asset. It's something that we've got a very active club, and I think that permanent nets would really enhance an already great facility. So the Hillendale Club is something that is all-inclusive. We bring out people to play and learn the sport. We took a very distressed tennis court. There are 2 tennis courts there that were in very bad shape, and we resurfaced and painted the courts for dominant pickleball lines. And if you have not been out there, the whole committee here, you should go out and see this. We turned this into a gem in the Portland area, and pickleball is growing very fast. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. So why should we get permanent nets up at Hillendale? And it is because when the club's not playing, nobody plays, all right? Or very few people do. We play from 9 to noon every day, and Sundays from noon to 3. A net costs a couple $100, and not everybody's going to go out and buy it. In fact, very few people will go out and buy a net. So the attraction of the club is great. It's wonderful, but it's something that with permanent nets, a lot more people could get into this sport, and we could utilize this park that we have in a much better way. I mean, this is a low barrier of entry sport. It costs $20 for a paddle. There's lots of people that do want to play when the club's not playing in the afternoons and evenings. And we just want more people utilizing this wonderful asset that Oregon City has. So 4 nets is going to, with installation, is going to cost about $11,000. All right. This is the current configuration of the court. At the top of the screen up here is where there's a couple of basketball hoops, one on this side, one on this side. This tee right there is a 4-foot-high fence. And then this is a tennis net right there. So this is all 8 of our courts right here. Just last year, our club, through fundraising and grant money, poured a 20 by 30 foot cement pad and made a seating area and a storage area on here, and it's turned out very well. In fact, this is what it looks like in real life. And it takes all these people that used to sit on the court and wait for the next game to play to get them out of the court and sit in a much safer area. And it is something that is made for a huge improvement for the Hillendale Pickleball Club. So this is the current state of affairs of tennis at Hillendale. There is a net that somebody sat on this and has bent the posts over here on either side so that this is really unusable to play tennis at all. And in fact, most pickleball courts that are in the Portland area have tennis nets, but they're only used to go ahead and catch the balls from other pickleball courts. These are the nets over at Lake Oswego. They have 6 courts that are predominantly drawn for pickleball. There are tennis nets back here that catch the balls in between the pickleball courts, and there are no pickleball or tennis lines drawn on their court at all. This is all pickleball. So here's another pickleball courts over at Raleigh Park. They have the permanent nets right here. Here's their old tennis net that is up and straight, but it's just there to catch the balls over there. So my proposal, and this is another one over at Ridgeview Park, but they have a permanent net. This is non-dominant lines for pickleball and non-dominant for tennis, and these are really confusing places to play because where the ball bounces makes a difference in both sports, whether it's tennis or pickleball. And this is an example of a bad compromise for everybody. So our ask is to have the city of Oregon City purchase and install 4 permanent nets, okay? And I think that this is something that could make our asset up at Hillendale a whole lot better. So that's what I have right now, but there's more. And if indeed I could wave a wand, we could ask for a whole lot more. All right, so our Hillendale Pickleball Club wish list includes electricity for the courts, for tournaments and web cameras, just so we can plug in something. General lighting around the courts would be wonderful. 2 years ago, when Phil Lewis was in charge of the Park and Rec Department, he headed up a program with our club to apply for a grant to make lighting all around the Hillendale walking path and our courts. And unfortunately, we did not get that grant, but it is still a need. It is still would be a huge asset so that we could play in the evenings when it's dark out. And then another big ask here is transfer the unused bleachers at the horseshoe pits in Clackamette Park to our cement pad up at the Hillendale Pickleball Club. That's something that we'd love to get. I know it's sitting idle, and it'd be really nice. Other big wishes over here would be the permanent restroom. And then if we could have a roof over the courts, we would be like a Northwest regional special place for people to come and play. So what would it look like? It'd be
budget.
It would be something that is what the John McLaughlin school shelters look like. This would be something that we could build over our courts, and this is one over at King's School. So if indeed we could get everything on our wish list, that'd be wonderful. But right now, we just want to ask the city to see if we can get some permanent 4 pickleball nets. So thank you. That's it.
Tim, thank you very much. Brent, why don't you lead us off with some questions?
Tim, I love your passion for pickleball. I mean that sincerely. Absolutely. My questions. I mean, $11,000 is a chunk of change. And you kind of answered part of my question with your last slide there. What happens in the wintertime? Because these pickleball courts aren't covered right now. What happens in the wintertime? Are these pickleball nets, do they stay up all year long? What type of degradation comes to them with, inclement weather, these types of things?
Sure. We play every day it's dry out, okay? So in the winter, when it's 30 degrees, we got a hardcore group of people that are up there and they'll play. So yes, it'll be used in the wintertime. What happens? Degradation? Yeah, it happens. I mean, just look at any tennis court. Those tennis nets will last a few years. And I see that John Waverly is replacing the net up at Hillendale, but it's not the net, it's the post, and it's going to take quite a bit of work to straighten those out on either side. So yes, they'll last, Brent, but they'll last probably 3-4 years, easy.
Okay, and that kind of ties into my second question. I saw, the vandalism to the tennis court net, or post, I should say. What's to help solve that with the pickleball posts?
Use. It is getting more people up there. It is something that if indeed there's a lot of people there all the time, the vandals will go ahead and shy away from abusing that place. So it's something that if indeed we get lighting, it'd be wonderful. But if we have the 4 permanent nets there, people are going to be playing there whenever it's light out. So it's something that if you drive by the Lake Oswego pickleball courts any time of day, that place is packed. It is. And it's because they have those permanent nets. We don't have those. And we only set up our nets when the club is playing. So although we're open to anybody, it's something that when the club's not playing, this sits vacant right in here.
Okay. And last question, Tim. Do you have a cost estimation for your future HPC wish list?
Oh, about $500 million, no, $500,000 probably, with that big roof. That would be wonderful. The lighting project itself that went all around the walking path in Hillendale and then lit up this court, that was about $100,000. Let's see, taking the unused bleachers over at the Clackamette Park, we could do that in the afternoon. It wouldn't cost the city anything. So that would be wonderful if we could do that one. And a permanent restroom, it would be great, but really, and getting a little bit of electricity to the courts shouldn't be that hard for the city to do that. We could put it in a lockbox and get some electricity over there. It'd be great.
Well, my suggestion would be that to do those future HPC wish lists in phases. You know, it doesn't have to be in one fell swoop. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
You bet.
Brent, thank you. Karen, did you have some more? Did you have comments as well?
All right, Tim, we know how much I love you. But we're just going into a new 2-year budget. And I will have to say there is a large ask to fix the roofs on the mausoleums at the cemetery. And the budget is pretty well set. I do think in the future that Pratt could support grant applications for some of these. And a lot of what you included in here could go into our long-term parks planning and the deferred maintenance. But at this point, I'm not sure where funding is available for your beautiful wish list.
Yep. Oh, no, I understand. And I did talk with Kendall about the likelihood of the $11,000 beforehand, and not to be, to burst my bubble. I understand where we're at, but to put this on the radar, at least for the city, I think that that's the most important thing that I'd like to do, and that here's some items that would really help Oregon City quite a bit. Get more people into the parks.
Thank you, Karen. Andy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Tim, I'm assuming, I mean, if you guys looked at, if you can't come up with funding through the budget parks program, have you looked at funding to, to make it easier for the funding, you guys as a club and organization come up with the funding yourself and makes it easy for us to approve?
Well, the first choice was to have the city pay for things, but it's something that I have a bunch of board members on the club that look at the tennis nets and say, we're not going to invest our money into something that could be vandalized and not improved. And that tennis net has been that way for probably 4 years. So it's like it hasn't been improved. So they're hesitant on investing club money into things that could be abused.
Well, but it is something that the club has to recognize that they are the primary users of it, so they have to understand that these are the consequences of having that type of thing. So it's something that think about, like, I'm involved in a mountain biking organization, and used to be we would go to the cities to build trails, and they didn't have money for it. So we said, we'll do it all ourselves. We take care of all of it, and we knock down the barriers. So it's just something to consider and think about in the future.
Oh, yeah, no, we did that for the cement pad, but yes, I understand, Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is an option for us to go ahead and do that. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Andy, very much. Sean?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I really appreciate the presentation, Tim, and I'm not sure how many of us on PRAC were here when Tim first presented the idea of pickleball back to PRAC and said what it was the fastest growing sport in America for adults over 50. And I would say Tim's history on this project is he's absolutely put his money where his mouth is. The numbers, the attendance, the grant money they've brought in has all been exceptional. So I think he's got a very proven track record. Like Karen said, I look at the roughly $20 million unfunded maintenance, and I have a hard time parting with much of that money for anything other than stuff on the list at this point. And then it brings into my mind the idea of cost recovery and that whole project that this department's gone through, and where something like this would fall in cost recovery as well. So anyway, I just wanted to make those comments and say thanks, Tim, for really just educating us. I think it's important to hear this, even if we don't, even if we're not able to recommend funding, even in this year or next year, planting that seed, like others have said, is very important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Derek, Brant, anybody? A lot of what I have to say is I guess in some ways echoing what has been said. I think the city for a few years, maybe several years now, has had a good partnership with the club, allowing the club, to, build or to pour the concrete slab. And that was a cooperative effort where the club did a lot of the work. I believe, and I could be stating this a little bit incorrect because I wasn't involved in everything, but the designing, the collaboration, where it was going to be, the size, what was needed, and all of that. And then, of course, the city approving that, but being club funds for a lot of the things that were happening there. And I think that's a great partnership that's happened. I think I'd like to see more of those around the city, similar to what Andy had mentioned with his biking club, his mountain biking club, and those sorts of things. And so I think those are really good. As it was mentioned before, it's difficult for us as a committee to urge or recommend or encourage the city to spend money on something when we have a incredibly large list of other things that need to be handled. However, what comes to mind, and this is just a thought, I have no data to back this. I don't have the balance sheet or the list or anything, but what comes to mind is, and I'm not opening this up for discussion, but just sharing an idea that, Tim, maybe you could explore with John Waverly, with Kendall possibly, is maybe there's something that's happening in the park there that we're spending money on. Maybe we're spending time on that maybe we really shouldn't be. Maybe we're repairing something that's not being used. Maybe we're spending time and energy on something that just because we have to, because it's getting damaged or vandalized. And maybe there's a way to move funds, right? We shift them to something that's more usable, that's going to be beneficial. Just a thought. I don't know what that would be. I don't even know if that exists. But just the thought of, rather than creating funds or taking it from, deferred maintenance, but just maybe shifting it to something that, maybe Jonathan and his guys are just doing something over and over, repairing vandalism or repairing, tennis nets. And if the tennis nets never get used, but we're always repairing them, then I would question if that's where we should be spending money, and maybe we can shift it somewhere. I don't know. You guys all know that better than I. This is just an idea I have. So maybe that's something we can do, or some other sort of collaborative effort. but I do think something to consider, as well as we look at a master plan going forward. Certainly something to consider. Where are we going to put, what activities are we putting in what parks, right? Where do we put the dog parks? Where do we put the skates parks? Where do we put the horseshoes? Where do we put, pickleball? Like all these things, we can't put everything in every park. So where's the right place to put them? And maybe we find that this is the right place to put more pickleball and maybe put something else in some other park. But that's more of a master plan sort of scenario. Brent, you had a couple other comments before we move on? Yeah.
Hey, Tim, I'm just kind of curious, because pickleball is the largest growing sport with people over 50. What is the number of people who play pickleball? What is the membership level?
Oh, our club has 185 people in it, and they come from places as far away as Salem and Sandy and Vancouver. So we draw in quite a few people. The average daily attendance is in between 20 and 30, and people will come and play for 3 hours at a shot. So it's something that it's not just old people. It's just the fact that we play at 9 to noon, and people that aren't working will generally play. But we have a lot of 20-odds and 30-odd people that are playing and enjoying the sport. And the pickleball is taught in junior high school and high school. So they're starting young, and tennis is a dying sport, and pickleball is a growing sport. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of room for it.
So my point in asking that question for the number is, if you have 185 members within your organization and they each contributed $10, you'd have $18,500 for those nets.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties into what Andy was talking about and what Troy just talked about. So I just kind of wanted to kind of get a figure and an idea there.
Sure. And, when I joined Park and Rec's advisory, one of my big deals was public-private partnerships to get things going. This is the only way that you make change. It's the only way that this parks department can be enhanced and supported by the public. So yes, the club is doing a hell of a lot to maintain, to improve, and to make things really nice over there. So yeah, the club does invest a lot of time, energy, and money to keep things nice up there.
Thank you. I have no doubt. Thank you, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate the presentation. We're going to move on. Before I move on, my last idea, maybe to raise some money for your nets, would be maybe a Labor Day exhibition game. Kendall Reed, Jonathan Waverly, pickleball. I don't know. Might be an idea. Toss it around. You might raise $11,000 in about a 2-hour game. Just to see what happens. So I don't know. Think about it.
Okay. So, good idea.
Kendall, wait for the email. So we're going to move on. PrAC member appointment recommendations. So we met, I don't know, it's been a couple weeks now, with our candidate for our one open PrAC position. And after meeting, we had some discussion, and we don't need to rehash all of that, but do we have anyone who wants to, I guess, share any additional thoughts that they had since that meeting? And I guess before we go there, because I know we're going to lead up to a possible motion, let me just remind you, we will have a little discussion if we need to. If we don't, that's fine. It's not required because we did have a discussion before. But just a reminder, we can have a motion to appoint, to recommend. We're only going to recommend to the mayor, and then the mayor will, she's the one that gets to appoint. We just make the recommendation. So if we have a motion to recommend, then if the motion passes, we make the recommendation. If the motion fails, then we open up applications to fill the position. If we don't have a motion, then we don't make a recommendation and we open up for applicants again. So keep in mind, and I say this just so everyone understands, I'm not leaning one way or the other, not trying to lead anybody. We can make a motion. We don't have to make a motion. It's really open to us as to what we do. Just understand if we don't have a motion or if the motion dies, we open up applications and look for another applicant. If we make a motion, either we make a recommendation if it passes or we don't make a recommendation if it doesn't pass. So with that, does anybody want to share any thoughts, have any questions? We can just have a discussion here if we want to continue that a little bit.
Okay, Trent, or whoever, I have my hand up.
Sorry, you're on two different screens and I missed one of them, but go ahead.
Sorry, this one, that one. I think Frank would be a wonderful addition to our Clackamette Park master plan group. I'm not sure he is the addition we need for the committee. I think we need to look at another form of outreach through neighborhood associations. In the next, what are we looking at now? 2.5 years? We're looking at land acquisition, coming up with how we address the staffing shortages, how we're addressing the, what am I going to say? The deferred maintenance. Those are tax issues for the city of Oregon City. My past history and looking back at PRAC, residents outside of the city were usually brought on for a specific experience, expertise. I think Frank could bring a lot to what we're going to do with Clackamette, but I didn't get a feel that citywide he added to what we really needed. I think we need city taxpayers to fill that gap. And
okay, thank you, Karen, for those thoughts. Anybody else have anything they want to share or ask? Sean, please.
Well, I don't want to, boy, the night's going long already, but I tend to agree with Karen that really, I just want to echo her thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, Brent.
I would also like to echo Karen's thoughts as well. That's it.
Thank you, Derek.
I'd like to go against you all again. I think that something for enthusiasm can be a large part of it, in that I understand the fiscal awareness, taxation, whatnot. I think, though, that for what he said may not, and let me preface that, Karen, you have a lot more experience, so you're based upon historical. That's fine. But I don't think that I may be wrong, but I don't think we actually sat there and asked him, what do you think about fiscal responsibility of the city budget? I know he went off a lot of tangents. It may be there, but anyway, boom. Thank you.
Derek, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if there's no discussion, now would be the time to make a motion if anybody wants to make a motion.
Troy, I would move that we reopen the position, as well as the teen position that we really still need to fill, and go directly to the CIC and neighborhood association chairs for city residents that are interested in filling that opening.
Okay, so that's two parts. Let's go with your first part, which is the motion to open the applications for PrAC position. Do we have a second to Karen's motion? Sean seconds that. So that Kendall, that's Karen with the motion, Sean with the second. Go ahead and poll, please.
Tim West,
Aye.
Karen Morey,
Aye.
Troy Bollinger,
Aye.
Jeff Sargent,
Aye.
Derek Kugel.
No.
Okay. Andy Crump,
Aye.
Sean Datchler,
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it.
So Kendall, there was a couple ideas shared about maybe how to reach out as well. I mean, I know you know how to do that and what to do, but do you have any questions for us or ideas or anything you want to ask us about that, or just go with what you got?
I think I got it.
Okay, sounds good. Oh, hang on. Did I see a hand that I missed? Yeah, Sean, go ahead, please.
Just while we're on the topic, and since Karen brought it up, maybe we could encourage Kendall to speak with the high school counselors and maybe plant the seed, because in the past when we had this, it started off usually in the fall, going into somebody in a government class or a student council. So I think we're at the perfect time to plant those seeds June, July, August for a high school representative in the fall.
All right.
JROTC is another group. You know, those kids are looking for things to pad their scholarship applications. And frankly, that's what this can be.
Okay.
That is true. That wasn't a specific position we were talking about, but that certainly is a position we need to fill as well.
Well, yeah, Karen brought it up, so.
Yeah, no, I say that, I agree. That's definitely one. If we're going to do one, let's do the other. And now's the right time to do that. So I totally agree with that. Okay. All right. So moving on to member reports. Does anybody have anything? Well, actually, let me just do it this way. I'll just go across the my screen, make it nice and uniform here. Tim, you're the first one I see on my screen. Do you have anything to report to the group?
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Okay. Karen, do you have anything to report?
A few and a question before my phone decided not to cooperate. I wanted to say that the Oregon City Parks Foundation on Tuesday night agreed that the blue bags for the returnable bottles would be donated to Elijah Dean Hoff Scholarship Fund. If anybody wants to give their returnables to the Oregon City Parks Foundation, I can connect you with Dee Dee Dalsrud, who will give you the pre-marked blue bags, which is where all of my 10 centers are going back because I can afford the 10 cents. Monday morning, 9 a.m. will be the virtual Memorial Day ceremony at Mountain View Cemetery. This year we coordinated with the Willamette Falls Media Center and kind of upped our game. So tune in at 9 a.m., go to the city website to get the link to the video. And Kendall, I have two questions. I want to follow up on the monarch butterflies and also the Filbert Run naming process, or AKA the city naming process. Will that come under your report?
All right, thank you. Good job, dude. I'm done. Waiting for Kendall.
Derek, do you have anything to report?
I know.
No. Jeff?
Nope.
Sean?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it was an absolute honor to attend the dedication of the memorial in the park at Tyrone S. Woods. And I saw many of you there. That's a project that is about 16 years in the making. So when we think about the process it takes to acquire land and then design the park and then name the park, then construct the park and then dedicate the park, it's a grueling, long process. So when we think of the unfunded maintenance and the other priorities on our lists, think about how long that particular neighborhood sat unserved in terms of parks. Before that park was built, the nearest park to my house was 2.5 miles away. And that's unfortunate because there were hundreds and hundreds of homes up in that area for 20 years that didn't have a place to take their kids to go play. But I'm going off on a tangent. I just wanted to say that city staff has done an outstanding job. Kendall, Denise, and back to Don. I'm sure he's not listening tonight, but those people got this project back on track. It's probably 2 years overdue from what the citizens of this city were promised. And at times we were almost going to lose the grant funding for it, but those people got this back on track, and I'm truly grateful. And that's really what we're all here for, right? Is to serve the citizens and get those things out there for them. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. My screen shifted around. Andy, did I ask you yet? Did you have a report for us?
No.
Nothing to report. Okay. Brent, anything to report?
No, the only thing is the Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park dedication. I really valued being a part of that. Sean, thank you very much for all of your efforts in making that come to fruition. Kendall, again, you knocked it out of the park in your presentation. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is it was really eye-opening as to how much of an impact that park was, not only to the people who knew Tyrone S. Woods, but to the community in whole. And it's those types of things that we need to keep striving to working for in this community. That's all.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Kendall, staff report. It's all with you.
So I will start off by just thanking all of you for your support for Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park and your support with the dedication. That couldn't have happened without your support. Also the VFW and DJ and Sean, the support that you all gave us, the fundraising that was done. It was a huge community effort. Rochelle and Kristen, kudos to them for putting on a fantastic event. And Denise, who can't be with us today, she's on a much deserved vacation, who led the construction of that very difficult and trying times. And that wouldn't have happened without her leadership. And Jonathan Waverly, our park manager, and his team, who put in many months, many hours of labor to get that park ready to open. So thank all of you for your support. It's a beautiful park. It's already making a huge impact on the community, and just thank you for your efforts there. All right, so Monarch Butterfly. So in conversations that I've had with Troy and Sean, one of the things that I did was go back to the National Wildlife Federation and see if there was an opportunity for us to still move forward with signing the pledge and being a part of that program. So I was put in contact with a representative for Oregon City Communities, and they are willing to make an exception for us and allow us to take the pledge if we're willing to do 3 items on the list that was provided by the deadline on December 1st. So if that's something that we do want to pursue, and if the group decides that that's something that we want to move forward with, yes, we would need to write a letter of recommendation and support to the mayor to get her to sign off on it. And then in the next few weeks, I would need to follow up with them to let them know that we want to be a part of it so they could reopen it, so we could take the pledge. So I just wanted to give it. Karen, it looks like you have a question.
Not a question, but willing to work on it because, okay, I glitched it. I asked Rachel why nothing had happened to find out that Rachel didn't know anything about what was going on, and it was Denise. So Denise and I connected. I would be more than happy to work with Denise and any other member of the committee to make a recommendation to Rachel to sign on to the commitment. I'm sitting here with 2 huge packs of seeds for pollinator flowers that are going out this weekend in my backyard. I'm not sure where we go from here, but wherever we go, I really want to be part of it.
All right. Any other comments or questions about the Monarch Butterfly Pledge? All right. Another great announcement that I'm happy to announce is the opening ceremony for DC Lotterette Park. That's happening on June 5th. And Rochelle, please correct me if I have my timing wrong, but it's at 10 a.m. Invitations have gone out. Please follow up and confirm if you're coming. I think the deadline is June 1st. So we're really excited about that. We're working with the Lotterette Park core team on putting together that event. Rochelle is helping to put that together. We're really excited about getting another park open. I'll reiterate the fact that we're opening and developing parks, and this many parks, 3 parks in the span of a year is definitely remarkable. So kudos to you, kudos to the team who's been doing a lot of hard work to make that happen. Filbert Run Park bid opening is June 8th. We hope to break ground on that park, hopefully sometime in July. So we're excited about that park. Update on the naming policy. I did present that information to the city commission on the 19th. They did approve the policy with a minor edit. I was asked to include 2 CIC members as part of the standing committee. I did make that modification. And so we should be able to move forward with the naming process for Filbert Run Park. Karen, did you have your hand up?
It was a general thing after you're done.
Okay.
I have an issue with some what do I want to say? What comes after you? But yes, I thank you. I just watched that meeting today, and you really owe me for watching that meeting.
Okay. All right. Other than that, I will turn it over to Rochelle and the aquatics department for her update.
Good evening, everyone. I'll make this really brief. Yeah, we're preparing for the summer. So we are preparing for our swim lesson programs, our camps. We're hosting a series of 7 events this year at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. Unfortunately, it won't look like the summer concert series due to COVID, but we will be doing a series of events like movies in the park at EOT, a bingo, and trivia on the lawn. So we'll be offering activities, but again, it's going to look more like a COVID activity. And then we are preparing to bring our cost recovery work to the work session, June 8th, to the city, the commission work session. So thank you again for that. And that is all I have this evening. So thank you.
Kathy?
Hang on, I did not fall asleep.
Yes, you did.
All right, fine, I did a little bit. I'm going to echo Rochelle, which is we are preparing for our summer activities and some transition at the Pioneer Center. And it will look very COVID-like, but we're moving in the right direction. So that's good news. We'll be offering some new things coming up. We're just trying to figure out what those things are. But we're excited to get moving in the less COVID direction. And I just wanted to really congratulate Melissa and Rochelle on that really large grant that they received for the camps. This is a pretty big deal for them. So again, good job, guys. Camps are not only great for the kids, but this is really going to help parents out who are trying to get back to work with childcare issues. So they're doing a really great service for our community. So I appreciate them a lot. We'll be transitioning our Meals on Wheels. We're going to go some hot meals, some frozen meals. So we're working on a lot of different aspects for summer. And I'm really hoping that by fall, we will start to look more like we used to. So that's my update.
Looks like Britt has a question.
Hey, Kathy, do you need any volunteers for the Meals on Wheels?
Well, we've been getting a lot of applications processed. It takes us a little bit of time because we have to go through an extensive criminal background check. So if you have folks that are interested in volunteering for Meals on Wheels, we are happy to get those applications out. It takes 2 to 3 months sometimes through the county. So we're doing a slow opening as we bring volunteers back online. There's a lot of new training for volunteers with COVID rules. And just because Meals on Wheels clients are so very vulnerable, it does take a lot more work to get them to really be extra careful with those folks. So that's why we're kind of going to go out in a slower process of returning to hot meals every day. Okay. Want to be a little careful, but yes, we can always use a volunteer.
So I'm just kind of curious. I know that Providence has a community center here in Oregon City. Is there anything that they can do to partner with you?
Providence. Which part of Providence are you talking about?
Well, we have the hospital, Willamette Falls, but we also have the community center down on Main Street.
I am not familiar.
Are you thinking Washington by Abernethy Center, Brent?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yes, I do know them. They're mostly a training site, and most of our Meals on Wheels individuals, because it's kind of in the middle of the day, usually around 10 o'clock, we start packaging meals up. A lot of times groups will do like a once a month route. So we've done outreach with Kiwanis and some of those service clubs and sometimes the long-term care communities. We haven't done one with Providence though.
Okay, I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity to Providence to synchronize with your services. So maybe we can take this offline and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Kathy? All right, John?
Yeah, so mostly I know we're short on time here tonight, and so I don't want to take a whole lot of everybody's evening up. Yes, our staff put a lot of work and effort into Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park. So one of the things that I'd like to do at this point in time is just thank my staff for all the level of commitment that they've put in, all the time, energy, and efforts. And it was really, just a huge undertaking, bringing on a new park like that. And there's a lot that goes into that. And I don't think people take that into consideration. There's a new park, and why isn't it just open? And that's going to be one of the other items that I'm going to be talking about, is that at Tyrone Woods currently the dog park is closed, and this is a very significant matter for the community. A lot of people are wanting to know why it's not open, and I just wanted to make sure that people are aware of we're not keeping it closed for any non-specific reason. The turf at Tyrone SW Park did not get established as well as we would have hoped. We've had a very dry spring. The irrigation systems getting turned on and tuned have all been significant to the grass establishment. So currently, the off-leash dog area is still closed. What we are waiting for is for the turf to fully establish. And there's a lot of concern that if we were to open it right away, we would lose a lot of that turf. So I just want to make sure that folks are fully aware and what's going on with that. We've spent a lot of time wrapping up, trying to get DC Lotterette Park ready for the June 5th grand opening for that. So a lot of our efforts have been going on down there. And then as Karen had touched on, we're also working on the cemetery. So a lot of people forget we are Parks and Recreation, but we manage a 55-acre, fully functional and active cemetery. That takes a lot of our time, a lot of our efforts. I'm proud to say that every single headstone in that cemetery has been weed whacked around. We've mowed the entire cemetery. We've done beautifications to the cemetery in order to get it ready for this weekend. So I'm very, very proud of all those accomplishments that our staff and all of our support has helped us out with to get ready for. So that's all I've got for tonight, and let everybody get going so that we can head home.
All right. Thanks, John. And that's it for us.
All right. Well,
okay, one quick from Karen.
Hang on a second.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Hang on a second, Karen. We're not there yet. So we've got future agenda items. I didn't have any that I took on my notes. But I know, Kendall, you've taken notes, but does anybody have any that they need to send? And again, this is not your last opportunity, but just if we need to get anything we need to tell Kendall we'd like to have on the next, or I guess a future, not just the next one, but future agenda items.
Actually, Troy, my first response was to future agenda items.
Okay, well, that's fine. We just have to do this all in order. So we just got to wait until we get to that. So that's what I'm asking for now. If you've got one, we'll go ahead and mention it to Kendall.
Look at the dates on the future agenda items. Many of them are far, far, far past. I think that you and Sean and Kendall need to sit down and figure out what isn't, and come up with new dates that we need reports back on things, or do we or don't we need reports back?
Yeah, we can do that. But as a reminder, this is a list that Kendall keeps kind of ongoing. And many of these have passed, but they've also been brought up on those particular dates at those particular meetings. And they're just here to kind of remind us when we spoke about them last in case they come up again. So it's not that we've missed them without speaking about them. It's just a reminder of when we spoke about them. But we can certainly go over it just to make sure something wasn't missed. Anybody else have any future agenda items to throw out?
Troy, I assume we're going to be adding on the goals reviews that we talked about. Well,
Yes.
those are scheduled to be on the agenda.
Yes, yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because as I'm sure you remember, we had a few of those coming up in June, in fact. And yes, I will be going over those for that. Yep.
Okay, and Troy, I also have a question on the Filbert Run renaming process. Now that the city commission has passed that Kendall just needs to make a slight change to the language, that we're good to go with that policy. I think we need to start looking at the naming process as we're moving ahead on developing that park.
Okay, yeah, I agree. That was kind of the first step in that to accomplish that goal that we had. So for sure, we need to do that. Okay, so with that, next meeting is June 24th. And by bylaws, we have to finish by 10 p.m. and meeting is adjourned at 9:56. Have a good night.
Thank you.